You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
All right, good evening and welcome to episode 141 of the podcast. Cody Abrams and Melbourne with you for this one as we get set to talk about the Metropolitan division ahead of the 22-23 NHL regular season. Guys, how we doing on this Monday evening?
Doing really good. I'm excited for the weekend. It's Thanksgiving coming up. Get to go home and kind of see a lot of people that I don't often see. I actually have a little football reunion, St. Mary football reunion on Friday, so that should be fun. And just happy that hockey's back on top of all the other great sports and playoffs going on. It's great.
100% happy that hockey is back, and also fantasy hockey. We did our fantasy draft over the weekend. I did my one keeper league with some friends, and then our 20 team Boys in the Booth fantasy league draft, which was a marathon. Stressful as all hell because I was in the car coming home from Northern Ontario, so the service was just spotty the whole time. Got kicked out of the draft a couple times, and I know I wasn't the only one who had some issues in the draft and auto drafting, but I got kicked out of the draft a couple times, and luckily I had the players that I wanted queued up and ready to go, so I got some decent picks there. But overall, I really like my team.
I'm happy with my team too. All things considering, it's like there's so many players getting picked in a 20-team draft that you end up picking some third-line players and kind of hopeful there. But I too got screwed by auto draft. One player of my 16 roster team got auto draft, and it happened to be pick 197 out of, I think, 320 was how many picks were in the draft, around there. Yep. 197 auto draft went ahead and picked me Carey Price, a goalie who will not play a game this year.
Or maybe ever again. I don't even know why he was ranked.
Why was he ranked so high?
Yeah. That's like, I saw a couple other guys like that ranked who just might not even play this year, like Sean Couturier, for example, might not play all season. We're going to talk about him later, but just weird that he was ranked. I wanted to go through and just list a couple like surprising things from the draft that I saw. First of all, I was surprised that, Casey, you didn't take JT Miller with your 4th overall pick, because I know how much you like the guy.
4 was just a little too high. Honestly, with our league, with having it shots, hits, blocks, face-off wins, everything included, if I had the 6th pick, that's the highest I would have picked him, and I would have went with him.
Same here. Like, I had the 9th pick. I ended up getting JT Miller. I understand he's going to regress a bit, but I don't think it'll be that much, and I think he's still worth it at the 9th pick. And I would have gone as high as 6 as well. I think top 5, that's kind of pushing it, but then from picks like 6 through 15, he would have went at some point, so I was happy to get him at 9. I was also really happy to get Timo Meier at 32. You guys know me, like those are my 2 guys, and I was so happy to get both of them. I got them both in both of my leagues this year, so they're my horses that I'm going to be following all season long. Also, a couple more interesting picks here too. Ovechkin at 16 is gross. Like the fact that he finished, what'd we say, Case 8th last season, and like I don't see him slowing down anytime. He gets the hits. He takes the most shots in the league. Like he gets all those peripheral points that you need in fantasy, on top of being, like an automatic 50 goal scorer. And then the last player I wanted to bring up, who's a bit of a steal for my team anyway, and obviously that's who I'm most focused on, was Brad Marchand in the 8th round, guys. So I got him. Obviously, he's starting the year on IR, and he's going to be missing about half the season, but playoffs are the only thing that matter really in fantasy. You have to get there in the first place. I'm pretty confident my team's deep enough to do that. So I've got Marchand stashed on IR for the first however long of the season, and then come playoff time, which is the last 2-3 weeks of the NHL season, I'm hoping he'll be playing, and I'm hoping he'll be the boost I need to bring me to the promised land for 2 years in a row. But 20 teams, it's going to be a lot of competition.
Yeah,
I think that my maybe my steal of the draft, or at least the one I'm happiest with, is getting Heiskanen at 117. I didn't expect that whatsoever. And then getting Patrik Laine in the fifth round with 20 teams. That's a lot of picks to go by on Patrik Laine. He's a left wing, right wing, and he might be playing with Johnny Gaudreau this year. We'll get into this because we're going to be talking Metro here, but I expect Laine to be back to that 40 goals again.
That would be nice to see.
Yeah, me and Emerson were hanging out for the draft last night, and I said, funny how all three of the Boys in the Booth members end up with picks in the top 10 to start the first round of the draft. Funny how that works. So,
yeah, but the problem, Harp, why would you take Vasilevsky 6th overall? I thought that was such a reach. Like, goalies, goalies are crazy. Obviously, Vasilevsky is one of the safest ones, but at 6th overall, I mean, there were some good players on the board there still.
Yeah, that's for sure. But some good players gone as well, and kind of decided to build from the net out. And I feel pretty good about my team. In goal on the back end, one forward up front who I think is going to have another huge year. Got a 1-year contract extension. We're going to talk about this team, the New Jersey Devils, and that's Jesper Bratt. I think he's going to have a big year. So I like that pick for me in fantasy as well. Feeling pretty good about my team. But anyway, guys, before we get into the Metro division, just wanted to say I'm doing good as well. Had a good weekend, but my weekend kind of started before on Thursday night. Had the day off Friday with that being a new stat holiday for a lot of folks, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So I was off that day. We had some special programming on the station. So Thursday night, since I missed the show in Kingston a few nights ago with our good buddy Alan at Mansky, you guys saw that I made the trip up to Trenton, which is almost 2 hours away, to see the 32 Thoughts tour with Jeff, Marek, and Elliotte Friedman, and I had a blast. So cool to be able to shake hands with these guys, to talk with them, get pictures and all of that. And they brought Paul Coffey out as well to tell some stories. And I actually got to ask a question. So we'll get to that now. My name's Harper. Thanks so much again for doing this.
You're in the industry.
I am, yes. That's true.
Harper, what do you do?
I do a morning show on a classic hit station in Brockville, so that's where I came from.
Don't take my job, Harper. What's the format?
It's like classic hits like Bryan Adams, Bon Jovi, The Tragically Hip, all that kind of stuff.
What's the one song you hate playing?
You know what? I've heard there's a Rod Stewart song that's been played quite a bit lately.
What is it?
Can't think of it right now. Oh my god!
You played it so much you can't remember.
No, you know what? Tim Mitchell's "Go for Soda" that's one I'm kind of sick of a little bit. Yeah.
What's the question, Harper?
So I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan.
Yeah.
Love when you guys talk Sabres on the podcast. That Buffalo episode, I love that when they cleaned house with Jason Botterill and company.
Yeah.
Just wondering, is there anything to the news that they've inquired about Jason Robertson? Is there anything to that?
I'm sure a ton of teams have asked about Jason Robertson. I have no doubt it's true. I don't think he's getting traded. I think they're going to keep him. And you know what? Anytime there's a good player available, you're not doing your job if you don't ask.
Yeah.
Here's a good Bon Jovi story you can tell when the next time you introduce a Bon Jovi song. He was in Toronto, and I don't think he was playing at the Air Canada Centre. I think he was there for a game or an event or something like that. And he got in the elevator at the same time as Larry Tannenbaum, who's one of the co-owners of the Maple Leafs. And somebody walked in and said, "Hello, Mr. Tannenbaum," and didn't say anything to Bon Jovi. And when the guy left the elevator, Bon Jovi said to Larry Tannenbaum, "That's never happened to me."
Oh my God. I will tell that for sure. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, no worries.
And so you just heard the question from Harp talking to Elliotte Friedman and Jeff Marek. I just wanted to say a little bit kind of cheeky of me to put in, featuring Elliotte Friedman in the title of this episode. But that was the audio that you were waiting for. So hopefully in the future, we'll be able to get one of those guys in a full-length interview or something, because they're great. But Harp, that was really cool, man. When you sent me that today, I had to listen, and I just thought, what a great opportunity for you to be there in person to ask the question, and just a great opportunity for us to, have him, technically featured on the podcast. So that was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that post that we put up on our Instagram page, Jeff Marek tossed us a like on it, which was really nice. So fingers crossed that in the future we can get one or both of those guys on. And, for a couple of big names in the industry, and a couple of our favorite guys, of course, and for so many others, just so humble and so approachable. They said, don't worry, we're not going to leave until everybody gets a picture and everybody gets a chance to chat with us after the show. Like, it was supposed to be for an hour and a half, and by the time we got out of there, I think it was 10 o'clock. And I know Alan said the same thing about the show in Kingston, and they were just awesome. Going around, shaking everybody's hands before the show, thanking everybody for coming. It was great. So an experience that I'll never forget.
The two of them might be great, but can't wait to get sued by Sportsnet for saying that Elliotte was featured on this one.
Yeah, really, eh?
Oh, geez. Well, you got to take risks sometimes, don't you?
That's right. Hopefully it's not for another few years, and then I can represent us, boys. There we go.
Perfect. All right, let's get into a little Metro division talk, as this is the second last division that we're going to talk about before the start of the NHL season. Actually, by the time we get to the Atlantic on next Monday, technically the NHL regular season will have already begun, because we've got the San Jose Sharks and the Nashville Predators kicking it off this coming weekend, playing in Prague, Czechia. So looking forward to that. So let's get into the Metro, and right at the top, I've got the Carolina Hurricanes, you guys, in number one spot.
Huge shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring the podcast. SeatGeek is a ticket app that takes all the confusion out of buying tickets. SeatGeek makes it extremely simple to buy tickets to all of your favorite sporting events, including Jays and Leafs games, and you can always find a great deal. On SeatGeek, all tickets are scored on a scale between 0 and 10, so you know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. Green is good and red is bad. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code Boys in the Booth in all caps. So click the link in the description to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code Boys in the Booth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek. Summer is here, and you know what that means. Extreme sports like spikeball and road hockey have returned, and so is day drinking. The problem is we're not as young as we used to be, and these summer activities can be draining on our bodies. When you push your body hard or just feel run down, it's extremely important to stay hydrated. When you make hydration a priority, it helps you feel healthier on a day-to-day basis. Enter Liquid IV. Whether you're playing sports or nursing a hangover, Liquid IV has you covered. One stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C, with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, non-GMO, and free from gluten, dairy, and soy. The kicker? This stuff tastes good too, guys. Liquid IV has incredible hydration flavors like watermelon, strawberry, pina colada, and more, but my personal favorite is lemon lime. So get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code boys_in_the_booth in all caps at checkout. So that's 25% off anything when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth, all caps at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today at liquidiv.com. Shout out to Cocktail Bomb Shop for sponsoring the podcast. Cocktail Bomb Shop is a Canadian woman-owned small business, and all of their cocktail bombs are proudly handmade in Montreal. Well, what is it and how does it work? Step 1, you pick your favorite flavor of cocktail bomb and unwrap it. My favorite is definitely mojito. Step 2, drop your cocktail bomb into 8 ounces of sparkling water and watch it fizz for 5 minutes. Step 3, add a shot of your favorite alcohol, some ice, and enjoy. Fellas, gents, boyfriends of the world, these cocktail bombs make the perfect gift for your lady friend because not only are they tasty, but they're Instagrammable as well. Right now, if you go to cocktailbombshop.ca and use the code BITV15, you can get 15% off your entire order. That's cocktailbombshop.ca. Use the code BITV15 at checkout for 15% off.
Obviously, we're banged up in the playoffs and lost in a Game 7 series against the New York Rangers in the second round after winning a Game 7 against the Boston Bruins in round 1. And so they make some changes. Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan come in for basically nothing from the Vegas Golden Knights. Pacioretty is obviously going to be injured for a little while, but he'll be a nice boost to that lineup when he gets back and healthy. Ondrej Kase, Brent Burns, another big name this offseason that comes to Carolina, and Paul Stastny, a good veteran forward for depth as well. So I think the key for Carolina, guys, is that they just need to score more goals, and they just need to score more easy goals. And I know that was something that Rod Brind'Amour kind of alluded to after they lost in the playoffs, but this is a good team. They're a contender. They're a lot of fun to watch. They certainly work hard. And I like the Hurricanes to finish first in this division and maybe even win the President's Trophy this year as well. I've seen a lot of predictions in regards to that. So might be a bit of a reach for you guys, but I'm really high on Carolina. I've got them number 1 in the Metro. What do you guys think?
I guess I'm not paying enough attention or something, because I certainly don't have them winning the President's Trophy. And frankly, I don't even have them winning this division. I am pretty open for the first 5 spots here. I'll listen to either of you, and I'm willing to move some things around, but I currently have Carolina at number 2. I think that they really took a step back on their bread and butter, and that is their decor. It's certainly not what it used to be, and I'm really not in love with it anymore. I think, the top 4 is maybe still there. Who knows what Brent Burns will do in this new lineup. And then goaltending, Freddie Anderson, phenomenal year last year, but I just have to expect some sort of regression here. And, goalie voodoo, I guess I'll stick with that. Pacioretty isn't going to be playing until February, and then he'll probably be hurt by the end of March. I really hope he doesn't, knocking on wood here, but that just seems to be the way it's been for him. I like the forward depth. I really do. I think there are some weapons here that could blow up this season, but I'm just not in love with the backhand anymore. And for that reason, I'm going to knock them down 1 spot this year. See,
Case, I'm not really sure I understand where you're coming from with that, though, because I look at the back end and I just see, Tony DeAngelo is out. Brent Burns comes in, and I think that right there is almost an equal trade-off. The money the money doesn't really work there between the two, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the product on the ice, and I think they're very comparable there.
Ethan Bear gone, very high in the analytics last year on D pairings. Calvin DeHaan in on 2 of the top 10 worst D pairings in the league last year in Chicago. When I say the decor isn't what it used to be, I'm not necessarily saying the same as last year. I'm saying 2-3 years ago, this team in Nashville, it was who has the best decor? Let's figure it out. But I just don't think they're even in the conversation anymore. And obviously they still have some very solid players like Slavin. He's one of the best ones in the entire league. And then Shea and Pesce took a major step back last year. I don't know. I don't like the decor nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I think the fact that they were shopping Bear around, though, meant that he wasn't very valuable to them. So maybe bringing in a guy like DeHaan, he can play a different role there. And I think clearly it's about team fit as opposed to who has the higher ceiling or who's, better now in one certain aspect. Clearly Bear has more offensive capabilities, but you might need something different in the top 6. I just look at this team and I think that their D-core essentially stayed the same, because I think, your bottom pair isn't going to win or lose, a season for you. I think it's going to be your bread and butter, your top 4. And I think it's still pretty good. Burns coming in for D'Angelo, I think, like I said, again, is pretty much an even trade-off. Plus, Burns will be nicer to the guys in the room, I would imagine, too. So there's that. And then I look at their forward group, adding Pacioretty. Yeah, he won't play till January, February, some around that time. But, he's a difference maker up front. And to get him for absolutely nothing, I think was incredible work by the GM here. And also adding Kasha, is some more depth scoring. Seth Jarvis is another year older. Paul Stastny, I think, is really good depth. And up front, really, who did they lose? Max Domi, who they acquired at the deadline, who played like 15 games for them and basically did nothing. Like, I just look at this team and I think in every aspect, they're at least as good as they were last year. And then goaltending, like, I won't even comment on, because Freddie Anderson was top 5 in Vezina voting last year. So can we expect that again? Who knows? Like, that's something that I'm not willing to put a lot of stock into. But in terms of forward and defense, I think the team looks really good. And I agree, Harp, that I think they could challenge for the President's Trophy this year.
That actually comes as a major shock to me. I'm not saying to knock this team down 4 spots here. I'm saying I think that there's one team in this league that's better than them, or in this division rather, and I just don't think they are as good as last year. I agree with a lot of your comments. I think that they got some holes and then they just refilled them, but I think that other teams were getting better, and this team is kind of staying the same, and in my opinion is getting worse on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. And then I guess, like, we can mention goaltending as well. Like, I said that Freddie was 4th in Vezina voting, and he finished 3rd in the entire league in goals saved above expected. Like you said, Case, we should expect that to regress maybe a little bit, maybe to career averages. But even then, he's about a top 10 goalie in the league. And Antti Ranta didn't have a fantastic year last year. Expect him to maybe regress in the other ways. So, to get better in the other direction there. So even if you're not relying on Freddie to win you those games, like, I think that's still a solid tandem. The problem is, like, health for those two guys. So if they can stay healthy, I think they're in great shape. I just don't see them getting much worse. Case, who do you think is better in this division? I think I know who you're going to say, but let's hear it.
Have you ever seen The Accountant, Ben Affleck, where basically he goes back to his room and he punishes himself often, and basically turns up screamo music as loud as he can, and then takes this metal rod and rubs it on his shins as hard as he can to kind of give himself pain? Mm-hmm. I'm going to be doing that tonight, because I'm about to say that I think the New York Rangers are better than this team.
I knew it. That team right there.
Yeah, that team right there. And I just absolutely hate saying that. Talk about a D-core getting substantially better just through age, just through getting better. Like, Andrew Miller's great, Jacob Trouba, that pairing, they locked it in, and it was like, take that decision away from the coach now. That's a pairing. And then on top of that, you have Lindgren and Fox. Fox is quickly becoming has solidified himself as a top 5 defenseman in this league now. And then Zach Jones and Braden Schneider just getting experience and getting better. I love the D-core. And then goaltending tandem. This goaltending tandem is better than Carolina's. Literally, Shesterkin alone is making this tandem better than Carolina's. And then on top of that, like you've mentioned a million times, that this team just needs to start playing their young guys. Well, that opportunity is coming, and they're just going to continue to get better. I know I'll take this one away from you before you even get to it, just to belittle your argument a little bit. Chris Kreider is not going to be nearly the man he was last year, but obviously this team has shown that their power play is lethal, and that's why Kreider had a bajillion goals last year. And they have a few studs who can carry this offense. I think that they're the better team out of the two.
I think they're pretty good as well. Like when I look at the two teams, I can see an argument for either one being at the number 1 spot. I just think that maybe there could be some more regression on the Rangers than we think. But at the same time, going the other way, Lafreniere is only going to get better. And I've been saying forever that he needs to play more. Well, finally, in training camp, he's been getting reps in the top 6 consistently, which is a good thing. Kakko and Hedl, that's not the case. They've still been playing, roughly third line minutes in training camp. And, that was the kid line last year. It might be broken up, might be, staying the same this year. But I like this team a lot, Case. I'm not saying that they're even a step behind Carolina. I think they're in the same tier, to be honest here. I am really high on both teams. I just look at Carolina and I think, they haven't really changed or got worse, in my opinion, in any regard, and they've only gotten better. Whereas New York, their leading goal scorer was Chris Kreider, like we mentioned. He's clearly not going to be the same player. And then they lost Ryan Strome as well, which I think is an important loss for that team. He played a lot of minutes and he played, he was a driver on that line. So, they replaced him with Trocheck. We'll see how he can do. It's kind of funny, actually, that, Trocheck was a Hurricane not that long ago. Now we're talking about these two teams going head to head. But listen, I can see an argument for either one, but the way I have it and the way it shakes out right now is Carolina at number 1, New York at number 2, and we'll have to see how that shakes out in the season.
You can put Carolina at number 1, but keep the President Trophy's name out your mouth, because I think that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to score more this year, which was one of the problems, right? And
it's one of the problems for this team is that they have to play in the Metro division, and then they have to play in the East on top of that.
Yeah.
How are you going to win I don't know how they're going to win the President's Trophy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we're talking about these two teams here. Carolina finished 3rd last year. New York finished 7th. Carolina had 116 points. New York had 110. We're talking about 6 points difference here. That could be a road trip. That could be a Western road trip.
That could be Max Pacioretty not playing until after the All-Star break.
That could be it. That's right. I mean, yeah, fair enough. I mean, injuries happen, right? Teams have to overcome that. But what do you want to say? You've been wanting to jump in here for a while.
Yeah, no, honestly, I really don't think the President's Trophy comment about the Canes is out of the question. I really don't think so. They had an outside shot at it last year, and this team is so good in the analytics department. Number 1 in dump-ins, number 1 in puck retrievals. They've only gotten better up front, and I like their back end. Ethan Bear is still there. Calvin DeHaan for $850K. And Dylan Coghlan as well is a good player. He was basically added as a sweetener with Max Pacioretty in that trade with Vegas. So anyway, but a thought on the Rangers quickly. I have the Rangers in number 2 as well. Obviously, a huge step forward for them last year. Chris Drury's done a great job. They made it to the Final Four before losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they didn't really need to change much. I don't know how well that Trocheck deal is going to age. I did like Ryan Strome there, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't bring him back, but this is a good team. They're young. They're only going to get better. I still have a little bit of concern with the back end just because it is still so young as far as when you get past the top 4. There might be some growing pains this year for Jones and for Schneider. So who knows? And also the guy behind Igor Shesterkin is Yarrow Halak, who's not getting any younger, really struggled in Vancouver, and so I just don't know about that. But this is a good hockey team. There's no question about it. They've got that nice mix of veteran presence and youth, and I really like the Rangers. I just can't put them quite past Carolina in this division.
Just quick comment. They're actively shopping Ethan Bear. That's why I've pretty much counted him out of this team, because I don't expect him to be there much longer. I've conceded here. You can put Carolina higher. I really hope I'm wrong, because I just don't want the Rangers to be good. So I'm fine with that. I don't know. It's a scary team, and that's just something I don't like.
Well, it's weird when I look at these two teams, because I look at the Rangers and I really can't spot many problems with the team. So like, I hear you when you're like, okay, maybe they should be put in the number one spot here in the division. I hear you, because even their goaltending, like, you know, Georgiev was terrible last year for this team, and Halak is just a new face. So, you know, maybe he'll be better, maybe he won't. I personally think he'll be a better fit there, because he won't be disgruntled, because he knows his role as a backup, as opposed to Georgiev, who has wanted to be a starter since he's been in New York. And now, you know, maybe this year he will be in Colorado, or at least a tandem goalie. But like, you know, last year, how do you take Shesterkin out of the net? Like, it's just not feasible. Like, he was that good. So like, I look at this team case and I just keep saying to myself, you know, they're really, really good, and especially if their younger players take a step. So I hear the argument. I just think the way it shakes out for me is Carolina 1, New York 2, but I could see either one happening.
It'll be interesting to see as well how Vitaly Kravtsov, the former first-round pick, fits into this lineup. He's on a one-year deal at a little over $800,000, and that could be a really good value contract for this season for the Rangers. He's going to get an opportunity, right, with their lack of cap space and the deals that they're going to have to do coming down the pipe here with Lafreniere and others. So that's a guy I'll be watching on New York.
Yeah, I really hope he can navigate the noise, because it must be frustrating to be a player that's just constantly linked to trades. And, you know, how are we going to bring in Patrick Kane? Like, Kravtsov's a big piece of this, and then we'll have to throw in Schneider and this and that. It's like always Kravtsov. So it's like, fire him. Like, you just, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, too, just a little side note before we move on from the Rangers. Excellent return for Niels Lundqvist.
Oh, yeah.
From the Dallas Stars. Am I right? A first and a fourth rounder for him.
For a team who had zero leverage in that transaction, they made out like gangbusters. Like that, like, the player is probably worth about that. Like maybe a later first round pick. And throwing an extra pick on top, that was just money in the bank. But like, for a team who had zero leverage, I couldn't believe they got that.
Yeah. No, I was really surprised by that as well. All right, there we go. Carolina and the Rangers down. Moving on to the third spot, and let's see how this goes over with you guys. I have the Washington Capitals in the third spot in this division. I actually really like what the Capitals were able to do this offseason. I have some concerns with their back end, but you know what? They completely changed their goaltending in the crease, and they brought in Darcy Kemper, just won a Stanley Cup. Wasn't world beater good, but was good enough for the Colorado Avalanche. He's a good goaltender. And then Charlie Lindgren, who I think is one of these younger goaltenders that is kind of on the rise. Like, you know, we talked about Eric Comrie a few weeks ago, Chad, a guy that could take a step and really grab a hold of an opportunity. I think that Lindgren could as well, and be a very good backup for this team. He was almost too good for the American Hockey League last year and the year prior, being with St. Louis. So I like that. Dylan Strome up front had a slow start to last season, but then finished off really well. And then, are you kidding me? A second round pick for Connor Brown in a contract year as well. That is setting up nicely. So I think the only things that are going to hurt this Capitals team is the back end. I don't see Nick Jensen having as big of a year as he did last year. And that was a big bounce back season for him. Before then, that contract wasn't looking too good. So have some concerns about sort of the depth of the back end, and then injuries up front, obviously. Nick Backstrom is the big one, and Tom Wilson is also going to miss some time. But some good opportunities for guys like Strome and Connor Brown, and I like the Capitals. Not really there to say that they're a contender, but they'll be a playoff team, and a very good one, and I've got them in this third spot.
This is the spot most negotiable to me, for sure. I'm fine with putting several teams here. I currently have the Washington Capitals at number 3. Kind of to all the same points as Harper. This team was just quietly good last year, and now they've really fixed the goaltending issue here. I really hope that Vanacek he just needed a change of scenery. We'll see about that. Our favorite saying. I hope that's the case. Sure. I'll throw that one in there just for you. I still love this team's top six. They're going to get Tom Wilson back eventually. I don't think it's nearly as long as Pacioretty, but I could be wrong. Who knows? And then I think that this team has this ability to kind of solve career issues for players, and I think that's going to be the case for Dylan Strome, kind of in the same way that they did it with Connor Sheary. Like Connor Sheary was in the AHL, and then they figured it out for him, and they've done it many times in the past. Lars Eller is a solid NHL player thanks to the Washington Capitals, and I kind of expect that to continue for Connor Brown, Dylan Strome, Connor Sheary, and McMichael is going to be coming into this team. I expected him to play for them last year, watching him in the preseason, so I think that's another big add in not having to spend anything on it. There is always going to be questions about the D-core here, especially the deeper you go down, but I think I like this top four, and they've got some guys who can really game there. So I have Washington at number 3 as well.
Okay, so you guys are a bit higher on the Caps than I am. Shocker, I have a different team at number 3 who is kind of in the same boat as Washington, aging core. I bet you can guess who that is. But I'll talk about Washington first. I think their forward group isn't as deep as we think without those 2 key top 6 members in it, Tom Wilson and Nick Backstrom. Tom Wilson isn't back until probably the new year, maybe December. He's recovering from surgery. And Nick Backstrom, guys, might never play hockey again.
Yeah, I've counted him out when looking at this team.
Yeah, he might never play hockey again. So he's having... where did I write it down here? Okay, so he's having hip surgery. Only 2 other players in the NHL have ever had this surgery. Ryan Kessler and who was the other one? Ryan Kessler had it, and Ed Jovanovski. Ryan Kessler never played a single game after having that surgery. Ed Jovanovski played 37 and never played again after that. So this is a serious injury. He might never play hockey again. I wish the guy all the best. But I think that seriously impacts the Capitals up front, and Tom Wilson too, not having him for half a season. I think it's a bigger impact than some of the other guys we've talked about already, like, for example, Pacioretty on Carolina missing half the year. I think Tom Wilson is more integral to this team than, say, Pacioretty
I agree.
And I think that's a major loss up front. I really do like what they've done, though. Like, I like the Connor Brown ad. I like the Dylan Strome ad. I think those are 2 players who... they got for bargains, really. And those are good depth options. I just think they're missing a little bit of that, they're missing those impact players up front. And I think missing those 2 guys out of their top 6 is going to be a serious issue.
Yeah, it's the top end talent, but I mean, they didn't have Backstrom last year as well.
He played a handful.
I'll say you're not enough to really impact their position. You're definitely right about Wilson. Like, that's going to hurt, but I think that this team has enough depth, and that's the thing. I think it's going to be a little bit more scoring by committee here, although they still have Ovi, Kuznetsov, and Carlson to kind of be the stars. And let's hope Ovi continues to score 50 goals for them. I don't even know how he's doing it anymore, but
he's automatic, man. And same with John Carlson. Like, he's automatic, almost a point per game for the last decade, and I have him in my other fantasy league. So trust me, like, I'm hoping this team does well for my own sake. I look at this team, I look at the D-core outside of John Carlson, and I just don't think it's that scary anymore. And the depth up front, sure, but it's lacking high-end talent. And then in net, like, we know that Kemper, is very up and down. He has been his whole career. And Lindgren, he's a young goalie that we don't know too much about. So it's hard to put any stock into, how either of those guys are going to play. So I look at this team and I think they're still good enough to be a playoff team. That's why I have them in the 5 spot. If we see 5 teams from this division make the playoffs, that could happen. Probably not. It'll probably be 4. But it could happen. So I've got them in the playoff conversation.
But, you have them in the 5 spot, eh?
Yeah, but the 5 spot for me feels nicer than number 3. But if you guys both have them at number 3, like, obviously then I'm willing to move them up.
Yeah, I just I like the depth that they've added, recognizing the two major holes that they have in their forward group. And we'll see if TJ Oshie can stay healthy this year. That's been a problem for him. And, on top of Strome and Brown, those two guys that we've mentioned quite a bit, there are a group of young players that could get an opportunity to be in this lineup and make an impact. Casey mentioned Connor McMichael. That's the first name that comes to mind. Hendrix Lapierre, Protas, Brett Leeson. Those are some other names as well that could come into this forward group and really take an opportunity. So I like the Capitals. I think that they really did a good job this summer, again, of just adding some depth, recognizing those major holes that they have in their forward group in particular with those injuries. And on the back end, yes, some concern. Again, Nick Jensen, I don't think is going to have the year that he did last year. Feyervari took a big step forward, and then you've got Carlson and Orlov and a couple of depth guys underneath. But this team is really top heavy. Yes, they don't have Backstrom, but they have Kuznetsov, who has gotten back to his offensive flair. So I'm not as worried as you are, Melbs, about this Caps team, and that's why I've got them in 3.
Yeah. I definitely want to see Lapierre get a shot here, because that was another guy who kind of shocked us last year at the beginning of the season, who looked really good and probably had a chance to play. So I like him to crack this roster as well, and I think that would maybe solve some problems as well. I like to hear it, Chad. I like to hear the argument. And the argument cannot be because they're the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I have Pittsburgh at number 4.
Okay.
If we want to transition to this one.
Yep, let's do
Mostly because they are the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm not allowed to put them outside of a playoff spot because you can't count them out. It's just impossible.
Okay, so do you want to hear it then? Do you want to hear why I have Pittsburgh in the 3 spot? I look at their forward group, and it's virtually the exact same. Just healthy, which I think is a good thing. I look at their defense, and I think it's completely overhauled in a good way. Adding a boomer bust guy like Ty Smith, I think, is really important for the bottom of the lineup there. And then also Jeff Petrie, who I think is bound to bounce back after a terrible year last year. But we've seen that he's been really good in the past. So I expect somewhere in between, Petrie's prime and what he was last year, which, any improvement from last year would be good. And I think on a team like Pittsburgh, where you actually have some weapons to pass to, I think it makes a lot of sense that he'll have a bounce back year. And then also Jan Ruta, I think, is an underrated pickup for this team as well. I think this team really knows, or each player on this team, I feel like when I look at this lineup, they really know what their role is and what they're supposed to do. And I just feel like cohesively, this team makes a lot of sense and they just fit together perfectly. Not to mention having Tristan Jarry, who was 7th in Vezina voting last year and had a phenomenal season. He's been good for the last couple years. I would expect that to keep up. And same with Casey DeSmith. He had kind of a tough year last year, and he's been up and down throughout his first few years of his career. But I expect him to bounce back and hopefully be good for this team. So I just look at them, and I think they were so good last year. They finished with over 100 points, 103 points. Washington finished with 100. I think they're definitely still in the same conversation in terms of playoff teams, and I could see either one finishing in the 3, 4, or 5 spot. But I picked Pittsburgh because I can't for the life of me bet against them. I think they're still that good. I think having the band back together and everybody there and healthy for an entire season, fingers crossed, knock on wood, I think is going to be the best thing for this team. And I just think they're going to be just as good as they were last year, if not better.
Yeah, I mean, I would put this team, I think they're going to finish the exact same amount of points as the Washington Capitals. Like
about 100, probably.
Like exactly, both of them will be at 100. Like, I just don't really find many differences. The only one I can say is that there's a little bit more of like, if you're going to be betting on the two, I think there's a little bit more high risk, high reward with the Washington Capitals. And the Pittsburgh Penguins are kind of just like, you're probably not getting any money back.
Yeah, they're safer. They're safer, and that's why I have them there. I think That's a good way to put it. It makes sense. But the fact that we've talked about these two, Case, and I had Pitt at 3. I guess now, though, we're talking about number 4, right? Because we moved Washington up to 3. Pitt is now number 4. But originally, I had Pitt at 3, Washington at 5. You'll like who I had in the 4 spot. But,
I bet I will.
But, you know, I guess that's going to have to be the number 5 spot now. But before we get into the next team, Harp, anything else to add at Pittsburgh, Washington, this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, these teams are virtually the same. I mean, two generational talents in Ovechkin and Crosby that are you know, I guess you can't really say slowing down, maybe just getting older, not really slowing down, though. I mean, they are still just such key contributors every single night and critical to the success of these two teams. I'm just a little bit higher on the Capitals. I think I agree, Chad. I do like the changes to the back end. I think Ty Smith, it was such a brutal year for him in New Jersey, and he just needed a change of scenery. And same with Jeff Petrie. 4 consecutive 40-point seasons before last year. It's not like the guy just forgot how to play hockey, you know? So, and he wanted to be back in the U.S. with his family, right? And so he was dealing with a lot of personal issues. So if you're looking at a bounce back player candidate of the year or whatever, you could certainly throw Jeff Petrie into that conversation, I would think. I really just have some questions with their forward group up front. Big deals for Rickard Rakell and still term left on a big deal for Jason Zucker. Those two guys who are expected to be key contributors, I'm just not sure because they haven't been able to stay healthy. Especially Zucker there the last couple of years. He hasn't played that much. And Rakell has dealt with his fair share of injuries. And then I just really don't know what this team has in the bottom 6 other than Teddy Bluger. I really don't know. Kasperi Kapanen, what's he going to do? He's been so up and down and out of the lineup and then back in and just inconsistent. And I just don't know. But I mean, I could see this team finishing 3rd, 4th, or 5th, but I've got them just under the Capitals in that 4th spot.
And I think that's fair. Like, I think they're in the same tier. Like I said before we started, it would be nice if we could do tiers because I think it would be easier to, be right if you have a team in a tier, and a different team in another. Like, but I think these two are definitely in the same tier. That's why I've got them roughly in the same position. If we're talking points, like Casey said, I think they're probably going to be roughly the same amount of points around that 100 mark. And, they're both definitely, they can be playoff teams if things go well. So, I think it's fair to put Washington 3, Pittsburgh 4, and then number 5. That's where it gets interesting. Harp, who do you have at 5?
Yeah, let's get into it. So, again, we were talking off air, and after the top 4, I had a really tough time with 5 to 7. So I thought about this, and Case, as much as I want to put your New Jersey Devils in that 5th spot, I do have them at 6th. And in that 5th spot, I have the New York Islanders in this division. I think that, looking at last year, it was a bit of a write-off. And they started the year with a 13-game road trip while their new building was getting made. And it was an off year for this team after back-to-back conference finals performances. They didn't do a whole lot. I think that the organization looks at this as, last year was just a one-off and, back to more of a normal schedule and just everything normal in general for this team out of the gate. They added Alexander Romanov on the back end. I think that's a good add. Elias Sorokin, quietly one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, and a new voice behind the bench. And, technically, I mean, Lane Lambert was there with Barry Trotz, but he's now the guy behind the bench. And I think that it'll be just an opportunity for this team to play a new style, where a guy like Matt Barzal can sort of get back to his offensive flair and get back to the 85-point Matt Barzal that we saw in his first year. So I just think that this is a good team and they know their roles, and it's a veteran group that's had a lot of experience together. I think last year was a one-off, and I've got them in this 5th spot. But I'm open to having that opinion changed. So
I have them in the 6th spot. I'm not nearly as high on this team. They were bad last year, and then they did almost nothing to change the team. I think that the big problem with how this team is built is that they can't play a different style of hockey. It has to be the defensive style of hockey, which they could prove me wrong, and they could do it again, because it's got them into the playoffs before, and then it gets them deep. But I just don't see any real top end talent up front for this team. I don't see who's going to be putting the puck in the net. Barzal is, from what I've heard, looking for options of where he can go and getting out of here, because there is not a lot of offensive talent, and this is an old team. The one thing, like the saving grace, what I will say for this team to kind of surprise us and just grind out points, is their D-core is very underrated and like solid, hard to play against. And then Sorokin and Varlamov is a very good tandem.
Yeah, I feel the same as you do, Case. From the back end, they are built like a brick wall. You know, Sorokin and Varlamov, that's a fantastic tandem. Sorokin is one of the best guys to do it now. He'll likely be an all-star for years to come. So no worries in the net there. And, I'm glad that he's been able to come over and his game is translated well. And he's been so good because I've always liked the player. And then their D-core too, like Pulick, Pelech, Dobson, Romanov, Mayfield, Aho. That's their top 6. All of those guys have played a ton in the league. Their top 4 is really solid and underrated, like you said, Case. So I love it. But then just up front, like I have the same concerns, and I have them at 6, by the way. I have them in the 6th spot, same as you, Case. I just have concerns. Like I think this team, I think Lou, for example, or the Islanders management, I think they looked at this team and thought that last year was a fluke. They were only a year removed from a conference final, and that last year was just, because of all the problems, like, they're going to be back to normal. But they didn't do anything, and that's like they needed to. The fact that they couldn't sign a guy like Nazem Kadri when he only ended up getting $7 million, like they could have paid him an extra $200K, $300K and got a deal done. But they were playing hardball with the guy, and it's just another guy that Lou lost and he wasn't able to sign. So it's just tough for this team. Like they would be so much better if they could add a piece or two up front and get some more scoring, because right now, or at least in the system that we've seen them play in, they haven't been able to do that. I'm excited to see what this new system holds for them this season. And hopefully, like you said, Harp, a guy like Barzal is able to become more offensive, because we already know he does a lot of the underlying stuff really well. Like he's one of the best puck carriers in the NHL in terms of getting the zone entries and zone exits, as well as a two-way centerman in this league. But without players on this team to add to that scoring, like I just think they're going to have a tough time again. And I think management is on a different planet if they think this team is going to be just as good as they were a year ago when they were in the conference finals. Like I think they're still missing it.
What is this new system that they're going to be playing?
Well, it's just
I hope it doesn't include speed.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's just the fact that it's a new guy. Like I don't know if it's a brand new system, but it's
and that's what I wasn't saying at all. I wonder if it changes just a little bit with Lane Lambert being there and instead of Barry Trotz, and certainly Trotz was not the issue for this team. Very good coach, and they played very well under him. But I think just a new voice and a guy that has been waiting and has been rumored to, be deserving of an opportunity like this for quite a while in Lane Lambert. I think it could be good for the Islanders. So, I just, they finished the season well last year after a tough start. I just wonder if last year was a bit of a fluke, and this team can indeed get it back on the rails this season. So let's talk about the New Jersey Devils now then, who both of you gentlemen have in that 5th spot, a young team looking to take a step and had a pretty good offseason as well. So let's talk about the Devils. Case, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I have them at number 5, mostly because of that mentality of, expect the worst. And when good things happen, it feels more rewarding. Whereas, putting them in 4th, where maybe I think they should be, it just hurts even more when you get disappointment. So that's why I have them at 5 and not 4. Honestly, I'm just so thrilled about this team coming into this season. The amount of competition on forward is what gets me out of bed in the morning. This team, we're talking Andreas Jansson's probably going to be a healthy scratch because there's so much competition going on here. There's guys like Alex Holtz and Fabian Zetterlund, who I think should be in this lineup. And then even Graham Clark is sticking around in training camp so far because he's been putting the puck in the net. But Alex Holtz is filling the net in preseason action here. He's been playing with Palat and Hughes, and I'm loving that line. And then it's just from there, the top 9 is filled out nicely here. A healthy Jack Hughes can score 100 points this season, no problem, especially playing with Palat and then having a sniper on his wing. The line of Hischier, Bratt, and throw Sharangovich on there, throw Tatar. I think that's going to work out just fine. Harp, you've mentioned Bratt, how good of a season he had last year. He's continuing to have to prove himself being back on a 1-year contract. So he is going to be flying. They're doing things for him to keep him around, like signing his brother to an AHL contract. I don't know. It's great to see. He's continuing to work out with the same trainer that's got him here, works out with Alex Holtz and Philip Broberg. And now a healthy Miles Wood back. A few years ago, I would have never said this, but this guy actually has such an impact on this team when he's in the lineup. Something to do with that straight line speed and that nose to the net. It's fun to watch, and the team plays faster when he's out there. They all kind of meld together. And then bringing in Eric Haula really rounds out this center core. Michael McLeod's a great 4th liner. Dawson Mercer's an option on both wings and in the center. Not a lot to say negative about the forwards. I'll get to the defense. I'll be quicker here because I think that this is one of the best right sides in the NHL. And then you have such great defensemen down the left side. Ryan Graves, Siegenthaler made every defenseman he played with better analytically last year. And now they added Brendan Smith. And then they've got a lineup of guys trying to crack. Nikita Okhoichuk is trying to crack. Kevin Ball, Riley Walsh. There's a list that goes on. There's so much competition there. It's great to see. And then maybe the question mark of this team is goaltending. Can Mac Black stay healthy? Is Vitek Vanacek a solid goalie? He's struggled to be consistent. Both these guys are looking for consistency this year, and that's my big scare. Although Kenzie Blackwood has looked really good in preseason so far.
That's good to hear, Case, because he's my 3rd fantasy goalie, and he was kind of a boom or bust for me because in that tandem role, I don't think it's clear who is going to start more games. As far as this team is concerned, I think it would be beneficial for them to just let both guys play and see who is better. So in a tandem role for a 3rd fantasy goalie, I think it makes a lot of sense to take Blackwood super late. So I'm expecting him to be good and really hoping. I like their goaltending, by the way. I think that tandem has the potential to be good. Certainly better than it was last year because they had 6 guys play for them last year.
7.
Okay, on money
7 goalies.
On Money Puck, it only has 6 listed. Who was the 7th? I mean, we don't have to.
I'd have to. Yeah,
we don't have to get into that. I was putting you on the spot. But
so
anyway,
too many guys.
Yeah, 6 or 7 guys is the point. It's too many, and not a single one of them were above average in terms of goals saved above expected. It was a nightmare year for them between the pipes, not only in net from injury, but also the performance in net. So that was just tough, and it was a write-off for the Devils.
I think that this team has gotten better everywhere, and they could have been in the playoff conversation if they had league average goaltending last year. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm really hopeful. I'm hopeful every year, but this is definitely the most hopeful I've been so far.
Me too. And that's why I originally had them in the 4 spot, but now we're talking about them in the 5 spot. Still pushing for a playoff spot here as sort of like a bubble team in the same tier, I would argue now. I mean, hopefully with Pittsburgh and Washington. So I like what they did up front. Adding Palat, I think it is a good add. You know, you would have liked to have gotten, Johnny Hockey or Matthew Tkachuk when they were available, but you know, you win some, you lose some. And then I just love how there's so much competition, like you talked about, Case. Like there are so many guys here who can make an impact. I think the problem for them is going to be who makes the team and where do you put them all? You know, because I think you have a lot of players who can play a similar role. Like, for example, Holtz. You're not going to bury him in the bottom 6. You're going to want him to play top 6 minutes, get a good opportunity. And I think the Devils are smart enough to want to do that for that guy, or at least put him in a favorable offensive situation. So we'll see if he makes it. I really hope he does. He's going to be electrifying. And then also Dawson Mercery. So saw how good he was last year, and he'll be able to take another step as well. So I'm looking forward to that. The only thing I'll say about the back end, aside from the fact that they lost Subban, which I think hurts them more in the dressing room than it does on the ice. The one thing I'll say about the back end is I thought the comment made by Siegenthaler made me crack up. And I was going to put the Devils at number 1, but I settled for 4 because of the Siegenthaler comment. It pissed me off that much. He said he's taking less money because the team is in a good situation. The guy still signed for 5 years, $3.5 million almost. Like, dude, like he's good, but he's a middle, like he's a second pairing guy. Like that's what you're worth.
Yeah, he is one of maybe the best defensive defensemen in this league. And it showed that every single pairing he played on last year, they improved drastically on like a group that was struggling to play together. Like Severson became a first pairing guy when he played with Siegenthaler. Dougie Hamilton gets better when he plays with Siegenthaler. There's just such an ease of mind when he's out there playing with you, because it's like, he's playing defense. I can do whatever I want now.
I get he's a rock. I just thought it was crazy that because realistically, what is he worth on the open market? Like, is it $4 million? You know, like that's reasonable, right? It's just like when you say, oh, I'm going to take less, you think of Jason Spezza taking $700K when by all accounts he was worth, still in the $3 to $5 million range on the open market in the first year that he came to Toronto. And it's like, I just don't think that Siegenthaler of all people, it just cracked me up. It just cracked me up.
I also thought the comment was like, okay, sure. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely didn't think about it nearly as much as you.
No,
he is still fairly young, and I don't know. I'm happy with the contract. That's for sure.
Yes, and me too. I think it's a good deal. I just thought the comment was funny, but I will say this: good vibes all around. Like I'm happy that he even came out and said that and is committed to the team. I just thought it was funny when he did, because it's like, what the hell, like. Who is this guy? Anyway.
Yeah, that deal definitely surprised me a little bit, but he's been a great fit there, and kind of got buried in the lineup in Washington. And I remember when the Devils picked him up at the time, heard Elliotte Friedman say that there were other NHL GMs saying that could be a really nice pickup for the Devils, and it's worked out well. Case, you mentioned the right side of that decor and how good it is, and I would have to agree. Hamilton, Severson, and John Marino on the right side. That is that's pretty darn good. So I like the moves that they made this offseason. I think the biggest key for this team to take a step and for them to be playing meaningful games in March, which I agree. I think that they could certainly put themselves in that position, taking the next step, is for just everybody to stay healthy, for Jack Hughes to stay healthy, for Nico Hischier to stay healthy, for them to get consistent goaltending night in and night out is a big thing as well. But if all goes well, everybody can stay healthy, and their additions can contribute. Like Andre Palat is just not only a great player, but just a great pro. I think he's going to be really good for the young guys in that locker room. And so if they can stay healthy and all goes well, this team could be finding themselves in a wild card spot potentially, or just playing meaningful games down the stretch. And I think that even that is the biggest thing for this hockey club.
Yeah. Before we move on, Case, I had a question for you. When did they buy out Yanni Kokonen? I must have missed that this offseason. When I was looking at Cap Friendly, he's $200K against the cap from buyout. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, his contract was like $1.2 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And they bought him out, I don't know, not long ago. Months ago, but
weird. I was just surprised by that because I didn't think he made that.
Yeah, that one was 1.2 was his like year extension or buyout, or not buyout, but RFA, whatever it was.
Like his
just one of those like failed projects.
Yeah.
So he's out, but Boqvist is still there, right?
Boqvist is still there,
back on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, Boqvist is still there, and that's another guy that like we didn't even talk about is trying to crack this lineup. He played the end of the season. I think he played around 15 to 20 games. He was half a point per game and looked like competent on his own end. So it's like, what's going to happen? I don't know they've got to be trading someone here soon. Like I expect it to be Andreas Janssen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He makes
Tatar, but you gotta keep
a Janssen around. Yeah, Janssen at $3.4 million to be out of the lineup. That's a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets dealt. Okay, Case, one question for you before we move on from the Devils. We have been saying that we don't really know who's going to be the starting goaltender for this team. Is it Blackwood? Is it Vanacek? If you were to put your money on one of those two guys to be the starter for this team, who do you think it is?
Kenzie Blackwood.
Okay.
He is the only reason he wasn't the starter and competent last year is injury, and he seems to be fully healthy, and knocking on wood again for that. But when this guy was fully healthy, he was a very good goaltender, and I expect him to get back to that.
I got to tell you, I didn't expect him to be back with the Devils this year, honestly, Case. I know that things kind of went sour there just with the way the injury was dealt and with the whole non-vaccination thing. But good for Fitzgerald and company to, patch things up with the player. And now he's got a running mate in Vanacek. So that could be a very good 1-2 tandem. But I seriously thought that it was going to be Nico Dawes and someone else as the two goaltenders for this team. But you know what? Not a bad looking tandem for sure. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to 7 and 8, and that does it for the Metro Division. So in the 7th spot, and I think you guys will agree with me on this one. So since we've got the Devils in 5, Islanders in 6, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets in the 7th spot, who I think will be better. They're going to take a step of their own this season, but I don't have enough on them to put them ahead of the Devils, although I think it could be very close, and that this team will be a very hard team to play against. Merzlikins is a really good goaltender. That back end is going to continue to get better. Werenski, Boqvist, and Jake Bean, they did overpay and overextend Eric Goodbranson 4x4, that's for sure. But then I look at this team up front, and while they don't really have a true number one center yet, certainly that's coming in either a Kent Johnson or a Cole Sillinger. This team is very good on the wings, and they should be able to score a lot of goals with Johnny Gaudreau, of course, with Patrick Laine, Boone Jenner when he's back and healthy, and so on and so forth. So I think the Blue Jackets will take a step. They'll be a pain in the ass to play against, as they always are under Brad Larson, but I've still got them in this 7th spot. I think another 2 years away for this team to be a playoff contender.
Yeah, I think that this is a team that has the making of a team that can surprise us. But I'm not big on them. The center depth is the main problem in that they don't have a first or maybe even second line center, in my opinion. Roslovic is a good player. I do like him. I like Boone Jenner, but I like both of them around the third line. Cole Sillinger might have been a fantasy sleeper. Like, someone could grab him, because if he can prove himself and take that first line and play between line A and Gaudreau, that could be nice. And then another guy that you really want to be cracking this lineup and producing is Kent Johnson. And I have no doubts that he could score a lot if he played it with that top line as well. I'm not in love with the forward depth, the center core, and the defense myself. I just am not impressed with at all. I hope that they continue to get better, like you said, Boqvist and Bean, but I just don't think it's there. But this is a team I like. I personally am a fan. Like, I like what they're building, and I hope that it goes in the right direction, but I just don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, I agree, Case. That's a key word, building, because they're still doing that right now. Like, Sillinger and Johnson are likely both going to be mainstays on this team. How much they impact this team right away is, that's up for debate. I guess we'll see where they play in the lineup, because that's going to be a big part of it. I guess with Boone Jenner missing the start of the season, that, first line center spot is open. It's probably going to go to Jack Roslovic, but then, we'll see what happens after that. Their goaltending, Merzlikins was about average last year, and it was last year where he came out and said that, he wanted to compete for the Vezina. And, he knows that he can be a better goalie. And I think, if things go better and Columbus is a better team than they were last year, this year, then he could definitely have a better year and his numbers should improve. Another guy, too, is Jonas Korpisalo, who is in a contract year this year, and he was just terrible last year, guys. Like, as much as we like the player, I was actually shocked when I read his stats and how bad they were last year. He had a .415 goals against, an .877 save, and a minus 13.2 goal saved above expected. Like, he was borderline unplayable at times last year, and that's why they had guys like Tarasov and Jeff Berube come in, to kind of fill that gap. So look for him to improve this year, especially in a contract year. He's like anybody else. He's motivated, wanting to get paid. So I think their goaltending should be better, because I think the team has gotten maybe a little bit better. They're at least older anyways, so I'll say that. It'd be nice to have Oliver Bjorkstrand in the lineup as well. That was a terrible move to sign Gudbranson and not keep Bjorkstrand. Like, that was just so odd. But like, overall, Johnny Gaudreau is going to get his points, and Patrick Laine is a hell of a player too. And those two on a line, they could really click and they could be good. Like, Columbus could surprise some teams this year, and I think that's how they're going to get their wins. They're going to surprise some teams and be better than people expect. But I think just looking at this division, I can't put them any higher than the 7th spot, and that's where we have them.
One thing I'll say about this team is, well, first of all, I think we mentioned they won the draft this year, in our opinion.
Oh, yeah.
They might have won the offseason as well. They've been drafting good for a couple of years now, and they're a team that is not afraid to play their young guys. We saw it with making Cole Sillinger the youngest guy in the league last year. I wouldn't be shocked. I haven't been following camps. I don't know if they've cut him already or something. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw like David Jiricek make this team. It just absolutely surprised us all, because they're willing to make that move, and I think that would be a lot of fun. It'd be a young team and something to watch. But they're building. They're drafting well. They're picking up superstar talents in Columbus.
Yeah.
Lot to like for the future.
No, for sure. They're getting guys to commit long term and attracting free agents and, drafting and developing really well. And I have to correct a mistake I made earlier saying that, Boone Jenner was one of their wingers. He can certainly play wing, but primarily does play center, and just another heart and soul guy for this team. So, there will be some improvement. They could certainly surprise some people, because this team just works so hard night in and night out, but just not quite there yet. But they're building, like you guys said. So, all right, we got him in the 7th spot. And in number 8, the Philadelphia Flyers at the bottom of this division, guys. I mean, you gotta feel bad for the Flyers. Am I right? Like, just, they had a terrible season last year. I think they had 2 8-game losing streaks last season. It was just god awful. A ton of injuries, and then coming into this year, new coach and John Tortorella, still a bit of a head scratcher there, I think, for a lot of people. But they certainly want to get back to being that Flyers team that's full of piss and vinegar and everything, and so they add a guy like Nick Delorier, which I think is a perfect add for the Flyers, and they add Tony DeAngelo. But this team just flat out is not going to be very good, and part of that is injuries. I mean, talk about being dealt 2 massive blows before the puck even drops this season, and that is Ryan Ellis, who we don't know will even play again. Definitely won't be back this season, and is in jeopardy of his career's in jeopardy for sure. So that just stinks, because what a great defenseman he's been in his career, and was supposed to be Ivan Provorov's D partner, right? And supposed to be a big part of this blue line, but just hasn't happened, and don't know if he's going to play again. And Sean Couturier, he's seeing a second opinion about his injury. He hasn't played in God knows how long, and we don't know if he'll be playing this season. Oh, and Carter Hart is also injured in the crease for this team. And beyond him in net, the next 2 guys, it's Felix Sandstrom, who's still a young kid, and Troy Grosnick, the veteran goaltender, who's an AHL goaltender at best. And just a lot of the young talent that's going to be in this lineup this year, it's been very disappointing, their development so far. Morgan Frost, Isaac Ratcliffe was just placed on waivers. He was supposed to be a big part of this team as a young forward. What are we going to see out of Owen Tippett this year, who it feels like has been around for forever, even though he's still young? I just don't know, guys. It's not intentional. I know this team thought they were going to be better and wanted to be a lot better than last year, but that's just not going to happen. They'll be unintentionally tanking for Connor Bedard this year, the Philadelphia Flyers. So a thought on these guys before we wrap up.
Yeah, it's funny to think about this team, how 5 years ago, I that's when I think the timeline would be, is we were saying they had the best pipeline in the NHL. You would expect them to be very good when you're saying your pipeline is the best 5 years back. Well, this team, it's a nightmare right now. There's not a lot to like. They are so unlucky with injuries. Like, just to think of a few, like you said, Ellis, Carter Hart, just his confidence in general, they've been unlucky with. Then like Nolan Patrick, that has to be such a stab in the heart for them. Just so unlucky this team has been over the years, but they've also kind of done it to themselves in some of the contracts. To talk about this team as probably being the bottom in the Metro and they're over the cap is a very scary situation to be in. So this was the only team in this whole division that I had locked into the 8th spot.
Yeah, same here. It's sort of like, when we locked in Arizona in the 8th spot, it's like, you see you clearly see a team who is not going to be very good. And I think Chuck Fletcher is the only person on the planet who thinks Philadelphia is going to be anything other than sitting in the 8th spot come the end of the season. I think this team is grossly mismanaged. It has been for a while now. And, you can only do so much, I guess, for your team with all these injuries, but it just is not going to be a good season here. And, not to keep shitting on the Flyers, because that's not what we want to do, but you just look up and down this lineup and it's not going to be good. Like, they're missing a ton of guys, and they're not going to have Giroux all year, who was flipped at the deadline. They're not going to have Couturier probably all year. It seems like he's going back and forth on whether he's going to get surgery or not. And so we don't know how long he's going to be out. It might be all season. If I were Couturier, I think it would be all season to miss this, year that you're going to tank. No Oscar Lindblom this year, which was another kind of a head scratcher there. It seemed like he was an integral piece to this team, and especially
they bought him out. Yeah,
especially the community. Like, it seemed like he was a big part of that. And then you just, you look at everybody else up front on the back end. Like, I don't like it. And the fact that, you haven't really heard much about the Flyers in the news lately, other than the fact that, people are already talking about, well, Travis Sanheim might be a deadline piece that, a trade chip for them. And it's like, the puck hasn't even dropped for game 1 of the season, and everybody's given up on the Flyers except for Chuck Fletcher and company, and I guess their new head coach. So like, that was also a bit of a weird move, hiring Torts, because they're nowhere close. Like, why do you need a motivator like Torts if you're not even close to a playoff spot? So 8th spot is the only place I see this team finishing. I hope they get better in the future, and I hope, they're able to manage their cap better, and I hope they get healthier. But as of right now, things are not looking up for the Flyers in any way.
No, that's for sure. Yeah, like Chicago, Arizona, Philly, bottom 3 teams right there in the NHL, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, there we go. They were wanting to be better, but that's just not going to happen. So you can look ahead to the deadline now, circle that date in March or whenever it is on your calendar, and say, yep, Sanheim, Van Riemsdyk, the list goes on. They'll all be gone at the deadline for some assets. And the Flyers can finally focus on the future and trying to build towards that, like they should have been doing this whole time. And I agree, Chad, just some gross mismanagement. And I think that Chuck Fletcher has no business being the general manager still there. But anyways,
he's not good. I'll say that. That's it.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. Well, that does it for the Metropolitan Division 1 through 8. You can let us know what you think of our projections on Instagram at Boys in the Booth. And next week, we'll be back with our final division that we're going to talk about. And that, of course, is the Atlantic, which is always a fun conversation. So thanks so much for hanging out with us this evening. Again, the NHL regular season kicks off this Thanksgiving weekend with Nashville and San Jose playing in Prague. So looking forward to that. That's a 2:00 start on Friday and Saturday, I believe. So those should be good games. Chell 23 comes out as well on October 14th. So looking forward to that. And we're right back into hockey season. So that is great. All right. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you again on Monday.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. New episodes every Monday on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details, and don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at www.patreon.com/boysinthebooth.